Hi, I'm Dr. Rich Hoffman from Christian Counseling Associates, and I am here today to talk to our folks about the Foundation for Christian Counseling. This is our nonprofit organization that we raise money for all year long to help people who are in need. And I have special guests with me today, Nathan Hempel, licensed professional counselor from CCA.
Hi.
Hi, Nate. And David Collins, regional coordinator with Christian Counseling Associates, also a member on the board of our foundation.
Good afternoon.
Welcome, guys. Thanks for being with us today. And the Foundation for Christian Counseling, what is it all about? Well, during the course of normal everyday life, our foundations, we take them for granted. But what we experience here is that when somebody is going through a crisis, the foundations of life are tested. And that is where we have the opportunity to meet with people in need and where we need your help. So, David, would you just share a verse from the Bible that talks about the importance of foundation?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So, we were talking, and Matthew really rings true. In particular, Matthew chapter 7, verses 24 and 25. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them may be compared to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and slammed against the house, and yet it did not fall, for it had been founded on the rock.
So, Jesus tells us about building our house on the rock, and that winds, rains, and floods will come in life. That's the importance of having a firm foundation, building your house upon the rock, because things will come and challenge us.
Absolutely.
That's why the foundation is here. We deal with people who are going through situations in their life, dealing with winds that sweep right through their families, people who are in the midst of storms, and complete crises, floods. So let's talk a little bit about that. Winds that sweep through the heart. And we would talk about this in the sense that we have people who just spiritually have things in their heart. Like maybe the way that they look at their lives, or they look at themselves, or they look at other people, and they're challenged. Nate, somebody that you would meet in counseling, that would be dealing with winds in their life. Could you describe that?
Sure. So I think part of our culture, we really push being like your own person and your own individual. And so a lot of people come in and they have this idea that we just really have to carry our own burdens all on ourselves. And one of the first things we read in Scripture, the very first thing that we see that God says is not good, is for man to be alone. And so we're not meant to be by ourselves. That's not how God made us. And so when we're so determined to be our own person and our own individual, that creates a lot of worry and fear and anxiety because we're not using our supports and our people around us. And so I think that's one belief that we have a lot, and I see a lot in counseling, that people come in, just this idea that I have to be my own individual and I have to be strong enough to deal with all those winds of life by myself.
That's a great example, a belief that's deep in the heart that eventually works somebody into an isolated place where eventually they're overcome by fear or depression or maybe even something worse.
Yeah, that's the thought that came to my mind when you said isolated, works them into an isolated place. that often they start with this, and I can do this by myself. That that classic Lone Ranger mentality, and then at some point they look across and they're like, oh wait, I'm isolated.
Yeah.
And that go it alone becomes very, very lonely and actually isolating, and it roots all those problems right up. The fear, the anxiety. I've seen that many times too.
Yeah, when somebody's isolated, they don't a lot of times have resources. So imagine somebody who, they don't have the insurance, or they can't afford, to go to a counseling, and all of a sudden this isolation is reinforced, becomes chronic, to a place where you can't reach the person. Winds can do that in people's lives. And so there's rains, and rains are what we think of as everyday troubles, and so people having problems at work, they're not getting along with their coworkers, or situations like that. David, what are some of the things that you experience with the people that we serve that are like storms in life, or going from maybe just a drizzle of a rain to an all-out storm?
Sure. Oh yeah. I mean, I've talked to a lot of different people that have this focus on those things, so much so that, like, oh, my cell phone broke. Just little technology troubles, and then somehow the rest of the day or even the rest of that week has been ruined because this hiccup, really. And those everyday trials of gee, I forgot my wallet at home. Little things like that seem, in my estimation, have added up for a lot of people. And and it comes again and again and again, those little everyday trials of even, trying to get out the house on time. I have kids, and trying to make it out that door, and Sunday morning or something like that. Good luck trying to get there on time. And those frustrations, I don't know that I've ever seen or heard my folks that I engage with on a regular basis mention any one as the problem, as much as all those winds and rains start to add up, and that frustration just builds and builds and builds, and those everyday kind of hiccups that we all face become almost insurmountable in some people's view. And I think it's also much worse when that isolation happens, because they're suddenly like, how am I even going to get my flat tire fixed? How am I even going to afford that flat tire, let alone get it fixed? And that piles and piles and piles.
Yeah, so that's a nice example. Somebody who has financial problems, not being able to fix their car, and then all of a sudden they find a flat tire, and then all of a sudden they're laid off at work, and these things build and build and build, and they find themselves out of reach from the help that they need, from the encouragement that they need, and it just compounds into a desperate place. And this is the place of the flood. So we have winds, we have rains that can turn into storms, and then you have a flood, a crisis. So we see people who started out maybe with having a couple drinks when they get home from work. And that eventually, they have an injury, they go to the doctor, and they find themselves addicted to opiates, and in a situation where they've overdosed. And we have people here who are searching for rehabilitation, and it's a flood. They've been in rehab 12 times. They've exhausted all of their funding, all of their insurance, and now they have nowhere to go. That is the example of the flood. Or somebody who has relied on help before, but they lost their job, and they want to come to counseling. They have no insurance, and none of the providers in the community are available, and they need somebody to meet with them, and that's going to take some funding. Those can wipe people out completely, where people become so desperate that they just give up on life. So those are the kinds of people who are coming to the foundation for help. As Jesus talks about, and speaks truth into our lives, that we need to have a foundation to stand on when these winds, rains, and floods occur. Your giving can be that foundation that the people find and stand on. And we literally see that every day when people come to Christian Counseling Associates and access that funding through the foundation. So let's talk about the design of how this works. And we want to make the case to the folks that are listening why they should invest in the foundation. But let me first say that we see this as your dollars, your giving, as providing light, strengthening families, and connecting communities. That's how the foundation is going to work. And lives will be saved. People's whole experience, whole situation will be turned around by the help that they receive. So, Nate, David, I want you to think about how the foundation works. Nate, if you could maybe ask some key questions that people, even through what we explained, how does this all work? How do my dollars, of giving, find the need? And David, maybe me and you can think of some examples of specific things that the foundation provides that really is going to build a foundation, that provides light, strengthens families, and connects communities. So maybe Nate, questions from this point. What do you think the folks are wondering about?
Yeah. So I guess if I were to ask questions, I would wonder how do I even access the foundation? How would I know, as an outside person, to come in? How would I even find out about it, or to know, how do I access this?
Sure.
If I need the help?
Yeah.
That's a great question. So David and I have answered the phones at Christian Counseling Associates, and so David, maybe you could describe, how somebody would, go through our network. But let me first say, how this works is the foundation does partner with Christian Counseling Associates, and it is a unique network. We've had community foundations invest in our foundation because they've said to us, we don't know anybody else that has a network like yours. So Christian Counseling Associates partners with over 70 local churches to provide outpatient mental health services in local communities. And that goes on in Western Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Eastern Ohio, West Virginia, and now Western New York. And so in each of those communities, we're going to experience about 5,000 people who will call us seeking help every year. And that number, as we become more widespread, is growing. So that's the first thing. With foundations, you always have to have a way to disperse into the need, and we have a unique network that is able to identify people who are struggling. They are coming to us, seeking to connect with help. So maybe, David, you could take it from there. Somebody, they're going to call Christian Counseling Associates. Then what happens?
Well, that is the first step, actually. If you call the main number, the 1510 number, which I'm sure our graphics person will have up on the screen here, and that 1510 number, any one of the coordinators calling and helping us connect with those counselors available, you simply ask, hey, I'm not so sure about my finances, affordability. I hear there's a foundation out there, the Foundation for Christian Counseling, and they'll describe it. They'll say, okay, well, here's the procedure. Basically, you give your information. They'll connect you with that counselor. The counselor will get you the particular application as you come in. Mm-hmm. And, there's a few pieces to that application so that we know who you are, where you stand, and we can communicate. And then that is forwarded off to the foundation person in particular that reviews those applications, and a determination's made from there. and that is connected directly with the Christian Counseling Associates counselors, so that it's all streamlined. The most that anybody calling in has to do is complete some, well, I say paperwork, but we all know it's digital nowadays, and then they're off to the races pretty much.
Yeah, so what David is describing is a grant process that's given directly to a client who is seeking services in a time of need or crisis. And I want the public to imagine that when somebody is calling us, it's significant, and they need help. And oftentimes they can't afford, the needed fee for the counseling. And so through the generous giving of donors who give to the foundation, which we hope will include you, we have been able to raise the ceiling. So we have a family income limit that people have to meet, and if they meet that requirement, then we can grant them funding. And we've been able to raise that through generous donors who are giving. And we've been able to increase the number of counseling sessions that we're able to grant to them. So it becomes a very smooth process. And I would also say through the grant, we also provide community connections. So part of the process is we want people to know that our donors care for them and want to minister to them. And so we make it an intentional point to give them the opportunity to meet with pastoral care and to be ministered to in a church in their local community. Oftentimes, our people coming to us don't have that kind of connection yet. We establish that, and your giving is a part of that.
That reminds me, another connection to the community is the different grants we have gotten. So by the way, I sit on the board, I'm a secretary on the board for the foundation. You and I were just talking about actually the Jamie Cordial Hall Foundation grant, specifically around grief, and that has certainly helped us connect to the community.
Yeah, so the Jamie Cordial Hall Foundation is a corporate donor. And the story behind that foundation is that Jamie Cordial Hall was a mother, and during her pregnancy, after delivery, had complications and passed away from those complications. And her family, from the unimaginable grief that they experienced in that event of losing Jamie.
One of those floods.
Yeah, a terrible flood in their life. They were able to survive that and to deal with their grief. And now they've established a foundation that anybody who is dealing with a loss in their family, they want to reach out and help in memory of Jamie. And so we have people who call here routinely, unfortunately, who are dealing with loss in their families, unimaginable loss. And this giving allows them to be comforted, to know that people care and that they're not alone. That's a great example, and we're able to disperse that because people will just naturally come here. So that's one example of a program that we have that the foundation touches.
And and some of those other things, and I kind of get the implication from the question you asked too. Is like, well, how do I get connected, and what am I getting connected to exactly? Yeah. So in part of that would be the Christian Active Parenting. So the foundation also offers the program Christian Active Parenting, and it's psychoeducation. It's classes for group setting of parenting, and it helps to really establish a foundation for parenting, a specific, I wouldn't say formula exactly, but a way forward that provides somebody with some tips and some structure that they can use to help them support themselves, biblically support their children. And in those parenting programs, that's all laid out across a number of different sessions as a group, and across 8 weeks now, I think.
Yeah, it's a 6-week program.
6 weeks.
But that's a great example, David. Christian Active Parenting is for parents to learn the best parenting techniques for their young children to build a foundation in their family of strong relationships. We also do a marriage program. We call it Marriage TuneUp. And these are courses that we will offer free in the community. And without that being funded, they wouldn't happen. But we can send an expert in marriage and family out to provide these resources that give people a preventive foundation for the times where the winds, the rains, and the floods will come. And now they're already standing, on the rock. And that's a big deal. That is connecting communities. When we're out there in the community and your giving is making a stronger community. So that's probably the second way. So we have direct grants to clients who will come. We'll go out to the community to reach out to people before they experience a storm in their life. And then there's a third way, and that is we will seek to train community leaders to also do these interventions. So we're going to do that in two ways. First, we have excellent marriage resources, and we talk with hundreds of pastors. And we will train them to do premarital counseling and counseling through a tool called Prepare Enrich. And a lot of those times, that program just allows us to invite all of those stakeholders in, and again, provide an expert for a full day training, and then say to the pastors in that meeting, whoever you run into who is struggling, if you can identify that, send them our way. You don't have to worry about insurance. You don't have to worry about what resources they have, because we know that the foundation is going to identify people who cannot afford help. But now that pastor has the confidence, because we'll just pick that up. We'll identify that reliably. We'll provide the funding and the resources. The connection is made, and all of a sudden, we're not working with 70 churches. We're working with 700. And those churches out there in the community run into people who are struggling in many different situations that would never be detected from another agency or a clinic or a hospital. It's not going to come that way. But without the foundation, all of that doesn't happen. This is a true connector to the people in your community who are struggling silently, who are being identified this way. It's a unique network.
Yeah. And I think that's partly what's drawn me to volunteering my time for the foundation, and also that light, like recognizing that the foundation does try to be the light to point towards Christ, the ultimate help and ultimate healing. Mm-hmm. And yet, we do that in a way that we hope to be achievable, affordable, accessible. And I see that personally as light, as a lighthouse kind of approach.
Yeah, we get into places, that only, the light could go in these dark spaces. I like to think of the foundation that way. Like we have that kind of reach. So Nate, I hope that answers, some of those questions. But maybe if you could think of another question, that somebody out there might have, who really wants to give, but needs to know how this works. What do you think?
I had personally about the foundation.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let me try this one out. Okay. And this is the last part of our mission we want the public to know about. Is we want to strengthen families. The foundation of community is a married couple, a parent and a child, a family. And that's what we refer to as family life. Mm-hmm. And we believe that we could go anywhere, find a need, and that if that can be supported and built, that community, wherever it is, will become strong and thriving. Mm-hmm. So we say literally to the world, if you will value this with us, if you want to engage family life, let us come and provide a training system and network, for your people. And that's what we found, believe it or not, in West Africa, in Liberia.
Yeah.
So we find in Liberia that it's a lot different than Western Pennsylvania. There, the church is stronger than the government. And when people need resources, that's where they go first. And so we know a lot of people, like coming here, will go to these leaders that we've built relationship with. They need training, they need support. And so we will train pastors to provide crisis mental health services through pastoral counseling. And we go there on the ground. We'll go there once a year, and then we will develop college or master's level programs for them to engage throughout the year that are quality, delivered online, and provide consultation internationally from a distance. Some people would say, like, wow, you know, what does that have to do with us locally? Well, let me just say that your funding in that special program will allow us to build a network that can go anywhere. And so here's another example. We're going to do the same thing locally with meeting the crisis or the flood of the opioid epidemic. And so our counselors are expert at addiction services. We know that the church struggles with people who are coming through their doors who are addicted, who are overdosing, who are near death in this flood, in this extreme storm in their life. They don't know what to do. Your funding will help us build a network where we can go anywhere in our 4-state region and cultivate leaders who will get the same kind of training that our counselors get here that we know is vital to meeting the need of thousands of people who come here a year. Now we can provide that to the community in places where it will uniquely reach people who are in crisis. And then with the same kind of online resources, we can be available within minutes to meet somebody who's in crisis, you know, who is helping others, who maybe doesn't know what to do. And that kind of sophistication in a program is so needed. You know, so you have all of the hospitals and clinics that our government has put in place to meet that crisis. But still this year, we've seen 100,000 deaths, you know, in the last 12 months from overdose. The hospitals and clinics can't meet the need. It needs to be more. And that's what your giving will provide. We will help people move on to a firm foundation, to find the rock. And
yeah, I was thinking of that foundation and the rock that strikes a chord with me with providing that light to the individual. So the foundation does provide the light to individuals, and we also strengthen the families. And that's exactly what we're talking about, you know, connecting us to a global family that we're really connected to as believers, as Christians, as fellow humans in this world. And then, you know, each obviously family of its own that we attempt to engage with and connect and, you know, provide grant funding is part of a community, obviously. Yeah. And so that community is then again strengthened from those. So, you know, that resonates with me when I hear us talk about the mission and the values that we're after as the foundation in that global perspective, because it is a community personal perspective at the same time. It's one of those interesting paradoxes for me.
Yeah, so the connecting of the community can be widespread. And we want to go wherever the need is. Your funding will allow us to go there, in places where other organizations won't go or can't go. And so, you know, finally, I would just lift up some of the foundations that have already invested. And hopefully, as you see the many people who have invested, you would consider being a part of it. You know, so the Hansen Foundation, a private foundation, you know, that has funded us, has recognized the need, and they have a value for local grants. You know, they want to know that people coming to our offices can come here, regardless of their financial means. And we're thankful for those types of foundations. A larger public foundation, the Richard King Mellon Foundation, they said to us, we don't know any organization that has 70 partnerships with local churches. And we were able to say back to them, those are just the formal locations that we provide counseling in. We know hundreds more who we'll partner with over the years. They've invested in us. Many community foundations. So there's county level foundations.
Let's say lots of counties.
Yeah, they will give donations, $2,000 to $5,000, and say, we just want to have you use this in our county. And we can do that. We're glad to do that, because in every one of these counties, we're going to find a need. Also, we have many generous individual donors. And I know that I'm talking to people out there that might give us $5. Thank you. That's wonderful and will make a big difference. We know people who will give us a certain amount every month, and they just want to make that as part of their giving. We have people who've been blessed financially, and they can give us much more even than some of these public foundations. Thank you. We're grateful for you. And especially when we consider severe challenges, the floods that have overtaken our country, like the opioid epidemic, we know that there are people who God has blessed extremely. And we need to raise $1 million to create the kind of network where people will be saved reliably. And we believe that that could be done in the network that we're working in.
Yeah, and that's it might sound like a lofty goal, at least does to my ears, and yet it's been proven that God is able so many more times. And like you and I were just conversing a moment ago, like the foundation has really outlived Rich's original vision, and I've caught some of that fever too. And it's like, wow, like I see God's hand moving so many different ways in the individual life, and the community life, and the family life, and yeah,
I never knew, so we've been doing this for about 5 years, and God willing, I'll do it for the rest of my career. I'll volunteer for the foundation to raise funding to help the people that we come into contact with. And I believe it'll be the most important thing I do in my career. That we will meet and come into contact with people that we would have never met because of the giving of generous people who are giving to this foundation. So Nate, thank you for being here. For somebody who's been on staff here for about a year and is just learning more about the foundation, would you give now to the foundation knowing what you know?
Yeah, I think it's a really awesome thing.
Awesome. That's awesome. We hope you'll give too. It's such an important mission.
Absolutely.
And we would just ask you to help people find that foundation, to build their life upon the rock through giving to the Foundation for Christian Counseling. We hope you will be blessed, and by that be a blessing to many through the foundation.